Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. If you're a focused learner who wants to totally bypass the Hollywood myths and get straight to the genuine history, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're setting the stage to explore the real, historical soundscape of the Viking Age and ancient Nordic cultures. We're going to strip away the fantasy and look at the hard archaeological evidence, the surviving literature, and the really fascinating ways later generations tried to reconstruct these ancient sounds. So get ready to hear the past like never before.
Right, let's just dive straight in. I want you to picture this for a second. Imagine standing on a cold, misty battlefield in ancient northern Europe. Through the fog, you don't just hear the clashing of swords, right? You hear this terrifying, overwhelming roar. The Roman historian Tacitus actually described these Germanic battle cries. He noted that they aimed for a crashing roar, where warriors would literally bring their shields up to their lips so their voices would swell and echo out. It wasn't just noise, it was a full-blown acoustic weapon, and that's exactly the intense power of sound we're unpacking today.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, unearthing ancient Nordic sounds. Second, the harp's magical power. Third, battle cries and shield songs. And finally, the search for Norse identity.
Starting with Section 1, Unearthing Ancient Nordic Sounds, Physical Evidence of Ancient Music.
Now, before we can even talk about magic or myth, we really have to ground our understanding in actual archaeological finds. Like, what did ancient Nordic music actually look like? What instruments did they leave behind in the dirt for us to find? We'll take a look at this massive curved metal horn. This isn't actually from the Viking Age, it's much older, dating all the way back to the Bronze Age. The first major discovery of these horns happened in 1797, when a farmer pulled 6 of them out of a Danish bog. And finding these intricate, beautifully cast bronze horns really revealed that our ancient ancestors possessed this unexpectedly highly developed musical culture thousands of years ago.
So the specific term for this magnificent instrument is the lyre. The name was actually coined much later, back in 1836, by the famous Danish archaeologist C.J. Thomson. And these lyres were enormous. We're talking sometimes over 2 meters long. Plus, they were frequently found in pairs, curving in opposite directions, kind of like a giant letter S. Now, modern trombonists have actually played these surviving lyres and can produce up to 5 distinct notes on them. But, historians are still debating whether they were used to play actual melodies or if they were just strictly used to blast single, powerful notes during religious rituals.
But while those giant bronze lyres were likely for grand ceremonies, everyday people had their own instruments too. Look at the brilliant contrast here. On the left, we've got a fragmented ancient bone flute, and on the right, an Iron Age iron rattle found in Norway. These artifacts are so cool because they show us that music wasn't just for elite rituals. People were carving flutes out of animal bones and crafting metal rattles to create rhythm in their daily lives. Basically, music was everywhere.
Moving right along to Section 2, the harp's magical power, music as myth and magic.
So shifting our focus from the physical dirt of archaeology to the vibrant imagination found in Viking Age literature, we really start to see the dual nature of the harp in the ancient Nordic mind. On one hand, it was this tool for peaceful entertainment. We absolutely know itinerant bards played the harp at royal banquets, and beautiful lyres have been found in elite ship burials, like the famous one at Sutton Hoo. But flip the coin, and the harp was also viewed as a tool of dark magic. In the epic poem Beowulf, for example, it's actually the sound of the harp that maddens the monster Grendel. The harp literally held the power to bend reality.
To truly wrap our heads around this magical belief, let me share a completely captivating narrative vignette from the saga of the Volsungs. Just imagine the legendary King Gunnar for a second. He's been captured, his enemies have bound his hands completely fast, and he is thrown into a dark, deadly pit just teeming with venomous serpents. He has absolutely no weapons and seemingly no way to fight back.
But here's the crucial point. How does he survive? Well, his sister Gudrun actually sneaks a harp down to him. With his hands bound, Gunnar artfully plucks the strings using his toes. It's incredible. He plays so beautifully and with such supernatural skill that he literally lulls the deadly serpents to sleep. And this isn't just a fun story. It perfectly captures this deep-seated cultural belief that music really had the power to bewitch nature and literally control life and death.
Norse mythology fully believed music could induce irresistible joy or even tame wild animals. But honestly, it gets crazier. In one late saga, a minstrel named Bosi crashes a wedding and plays his harp so powerfully that he forces the entire royal court, including the king and his guards, to dance uncontrollably. And while they're helplessly dancing around, Bosi just casually smuggles the captive princess out of the hall, hidden inside his giant harp. We also see music being used to interact with Nekken, which is this terrifying shape-shifting water spirit. The belief was that the right song could actually force Nekken to return a drowned victim from the deep.
All right, Section 3, Battle Cries and Shield Songs, the sounds of war.
Let's step away from the realm of magic for a minute and into the brutal reality of the battlefield. Vikings and ancient Germanic tribes didn't just fight with axes and swords. They actually weaponized sound itself to terrify their enemies and embolden their allies. And central to this is the concept of the galdra. This was a shrill, piercing, magic song. The word itself actually shares a root with the word for a bird's crowing. So this wasn't some gentle melody. It was sung loudly at a very special, piercing vocal pitch designed to cut straight through the chaos and din of war. Some music historians suggest it might have sounded a bit like kulning, which are those high-pitched, far-reaching calls used by Scandinavian cattle tenders in the mountains, but, adapted for the sheer terror of combat.
And we see this physical active singing in battle directly referenced by the gods themselves. In the poem Havamal, Odin actually describes his battlefield magic stating, "I sing towards my shield and enchant the war." Just as Tacitus described centuries earlier, these warriors were bringing their shields right up to their lips. They were physically projecting their voices into the wood and metal to create this protective, echoing roar that invoked the gods, unified the shield wall, and of course struck absolute fear into anyone standing across from them.
And finally, Section 4, the search for Norse identity, reconstructing a golden age.
So let's fast forward 1,000 years to the early 20th century. Modern researchers looked back at all these artifacts and sagas and really attempted to reconstruct this ancient musical heritage. In the early 1900s, pioneers like the Swedish musicologist Tobias Norrland were totally obsessed with finding the roots of Nordic music. Obviously, they didn't have audio recordings of Vikings, so they turned to the countryside. They studied surviving rural folk songs, particularly those calls used by cattle herders. Norrland audaciously suggested that the simplest of these melodies had remained entirely unchanged for centuries, providing this unbroken, direct link not just to the Viking Age, but perhaps even all the way back to the Stone Age. However, it's important to note that the search for ancient Viking music didn't always remain purely scientific. We see a pretty clear split between genuine historical inquiry and nationalist ideology. Some scholars allow the political ideas of the 1930s to influence their work. For instance, the composer Geir Tveit wrote that a highly developed, mathematically perfect tone system existed in the Nordic region up to 20,000 years ago. Now, historians today point out that this was literally impossible, seeing as Scandinavia was covered by a massive ice sheet back then. It's a clear example of how the romantic desire to prove an ancient, superior musical heritage occasionally just completely overran actual historical facts and evidence.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. We've seen how the ancients viewed music, right? As a physical artifact made of bronze, a magical spell that could tame serpents, and a psychological weapon of war. But here's the question I want to leave you with today. If they truly believed a song could control minds or turn the tide of a Viking battle, what power does music still hold over us today? How much of our own identity and emotion is still being shaped by the echoes of those ancient chords? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep asking questions and keep learning.